could, sir, state your name, where you're from, and your journey to Islam.
Okay. My name, Aaron, in Arabic, Harun, Ashanti. I was born in Virginia, left Virginia, went to Connecticut, stayed there a while, got married, got a family, came back here. My journey to Al-Islam, first thing I ever heard about Al-Islam was from my father. He was a merchant marine and he had traveled, and he came back one time speaking what he thought was Assalamu alaikum. And I didn't know what in the world he was talking about, so I was curious. I said, what did you just say? And he tried to explain as best he could. And from that, I met some Muslim brothers in the Nation of Islam. And man, these guys were thrifty, they were sharp, they were industrious, they had a conversation, stuff that I had never heard before.
Remember, what time was this? I mean, how old were you?
Oh, this was high school. I was 18, just before the last year. Yeah, 18, yeah. And when I met them, kind of helped me understand what he was talking about when he first mentioned it, Salaam alaikum, or he said Salam alaikum or something like that. It wasn't like we say it anyway. So after talking to these brothers, they were very, very, very learned in things that I'd never even thought about, especially in relation to race relations. I had been given by my father some books because he wasn't an avid reader, and he said he considered himself an illiterate person because he wasn't able to finish high school. But he took care of his family. He managed to get a job as a merchant marine, and he traveled all over the world. He put 12 children through high school. So he's old school for sure. But while he was traveling, he would gather books and tapes and stuff, listening to people, and he would gather books like all of J.A. Rogers, all of them. World's Greatest Man of Color, Africa's Gift to America, Nature Knows No Color, all of them, 1 and 2 volumes and all that. And when he would come home, he would try to get some of the kids to read to him. And I think I was the only one that didn't mind doing it. Right? So I did, and that kind of gave me a world view of racism, but not an American view of racism, what was happening in America. And when I said that because before he passed, he left all his books with me, all of his books, and that started me on this journey as well. But when I talked to the brothers in the nation, they were bringing it on home, right down to the community line. And then I began to see things in our neighborhood, like the merchants who were not of us, and how they would take advantage of us, and the property owners in our neighborhoods and stuff. I began to see them on a local level. Began to see how things were shaping up that I was not even paying attention to. And I'm saying, now how do they get to know all this stuff? And some of them were just my age as well. I mean, there were a few of them that were a little younger, but still, how y'all get to know all this stuff, man? And so they said, well, brother, you got to come to the temple, man. I got to tell you all this stuff. The messenger, you hear the messenger and all that. So they called him the messenger at the time, Elijah Muhammad. But he wasn't the featured speaker here in this area. The brother who was a featured speaker in this area, Minister Marshall. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or not, but I think he went back to the North Virginia area. But he was the minister on Church Street way back when. And there was another brother that helped him that he eventually named the masjid after. That was William Salam. He was more like a field person. Minister Marshall was a minister, inside person. So that brought me to Islam and studying. After I think I came to the meeting around about high school, and actually I was like everybody else at that get out of high school. I was trying to find myself. Even though I had those books, I was trying to follow my crowd, because I used to hang around 15 different brothers in the community, all dudes. And we wasn't even thinking about no girls. It was like, get out of here, you know. So, you know, we started drinking beer and smoking like young people do. Just curious and all that. We even tried marijuana and all that good stuff. Didn't last long, maybe because I got choked off all of that. After getting choked, it's not for me. So after this brother invited me to the temple, I thought I would go And I think I had a buzz when I went. But when the brothers started teaching, it seemed like I sobered up just like that. And and they were so strict. It was clean, and the sisters was on one side of the room, the brothers was on one side of the room, and there's a walkway between the two of them. We had chairs. It wasn't like in what we have now. But they had the brother was up on the stage, and he was the teacher. And he was teaching about the white man, and this is your history, and this is what was stolen from you, and all that. And I said, okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm fighting that. So I just listened to it and left away from there, and it leaves you curious when you hear stuff like that for the first time. So I'm thumbing through my material at home that my dad gave me to find out if any of that stuff gelled with what was in the books. And it didn't contradict it. It kind of fit in, but it was on a bigger picture. So for some reason it just stayed in my mind, my heart, and I ended up going again and going again and going again and going again. And I think I stayed there until Imam came, Imam Muhammad. But during that time while I was there, we went and, just like all the rest of them, out there selling papers and fish and helping to build a nation, as we called it. And we were working to build it. We thought we were building a nation, regardless of how it turned out. We thought we were working towards nationhood. And we had some skirmishes. If you probably heard about some of the brothers in North, had some skirmishes with the police department downtown North. They didn't, for some reason, they had this attitude towards Muslims. And I wasn't in that fight, but I was in the temple at the time. I don't know where I was when that actually happened either. But it got back to us as a Sunday. The captain was a former Panther leader who came into Islam. In fact, he was probably influenced by Islam before even going into the Panther. But because Islam was long before the Panthers. So he came and he ended up rising to the leadership of the captain, and he managed the fruit. And every Saturday morning we would have the brothers class, and they would teach us, and then we would have some small training and teach us how to drill and self-defense class and all that stuff. It was really good. I kept some of the self-defense techniques and training and all that we used to have. And a lot of the brothers who were in the class also used to go to a karate dojo. It used to be right here on 35th Street, right on the other side of Bradcar, where Bradcar Hair Studio used to go. He was a Muslim, the mother who owned the dojo was a Muslim as well, but I think he passed and he ended up losing. So there were some really interesting years, and when we were out selling fish and paper and bean pie and talking about the white man is the devil and the black man is the God, man, I thought that was it. I thought that was what was happening at that time. This was back, gosh, in 69, 70, 71, 72, 73. Imam came in 75, 70, right on up to Imam's leadership, acceptance. And when he came in, he started telling us about true Islam, gradually. And I thought that was another eye-opener. I'm saying, now, where in the world have I been? I haven't heard stuff like this. So I immediately didn't have a problem with it. I just had to do my own study, and I did. And that made me more confident when I did my own study. Because they had material they gave out as well. They had books and papers and things. Not just the Muhammad Speaks. They had The Message of the Black Man, How to Eat to Live, The Fall of America, I'll Say Against Ride, a host of books. And I think you can get them in the nation right now. Still can get them. The 7 Speeches of Minister Farrakhan. And it was so much fun. So all of that was so good. It was at that time. We even approached these white people and told them in their face, "You're the devil." We just, for some reason, we didn't have no fear. I mean, that's just how it was. And it was like having a face-to-face confrontation with what you considered your devil. And even though we worked for them, Right now, when I look back at him, saying that was not the best thing to do.
Right.
You work with him and then turn around and call him a devil too.
Right.
And he was very patient. Most of them were very patient. We didn't have any problem with the ordinary white people. It was just the police department. You know, most of the time they would stand back and like listen and look and just it. That was it. But I thought after the fact, listening to some of that stuff that we said, I'm saying we were really radical. We were hard on the white people, even though they gave us jobs. We had to work for them. We was hard on them, and we never. I guess we just moved on as Imam came. We moved on. We didn't have to worry about pushback or flack. There was one incident in my neighborhood. I was living. There used to be a community downtown where Harper Park is. Mm-hmm. And I was living over there, and at that time, there was one incident that I can remember where this truck used to come through the neighborhood. It was a black, it looked like a, what's that thing? It's a minivan, but I can't think of the name of it. It's anyway, it's a black minivan, and it had a skull painted on both sides, and it always had about 4 white guys in it, and they would put sheets on their heads, yeah, like and come through the neighborhood yelling out nigger and all this stuff. And that was the only time we had incident with the average white person. And with 15 dudes, when we became teenagers, we was just waiting for the opportunity to stop that vein. And it never happened, because they would be coming through, and I guess they would wait until they get a good distance away from us before they start shouting their epithets and all that. So, because what we were going to do, we could turn the van over. That's what happened, I think, down in the plaza when they had the skirmish. There was some incidents where the brothers had turned the police car on. We was going to do that to that van and take those 4 guys out of there and beat the snot out of them. Because we wasn't afraid of them. You know, even though they put the sheets over their head, we wasn't afraid of them. So anyway, back to 1974 and 5, when man came into office. I readily accepted it with no problem. And just after everybody said, well, you got to declare, brother. I think that's what they called it at that time. You got to declare your faith. And you got to declare faith publicly. They call that making a shahada. They call it declaring. And that was a language that came out of the Nation of Islam, because we had to go before the brothers' meetings on Saturday, and we had to do some teaching as well. So when they said that you had to declare, I said, well, what do I have to declare? They tell you Allah is God and Muhammad is the messenger. They didn't tell us to say that he came in the person of Master Muhammad. I know that was what they got on the Muhammad Speaks paper, but that's not what they told us to say.
Oh, when you in the nation, they didn't tell you to say that?
No. I mean, that was what was in the, when it came to making your declaration, they didn't say he came in, they didn't tell us to say that he came in the person of Master Muhammad. They just said that Allah is God and Muhammad is the messenger. That's all I said. Although in the paper, I did say he came in the course of conversations and stuff.
So my confusion with that, I have a question, two questions about it. One of them is, when you say Muhammad is his messenger, even back then, were you talking about Muhammad ibn Abdullah or Elijah? We didn't even make the distinction. We just said it. You know, because some people call Elijah Muhammad the messenger. Right. And those who knew, they knew we were talking about Prophet Muhammad. We didn't, for most of us, we didn't make no distinction. Right. We just said it. Yeah, we wasn't studious enough to know the distinction, so we just said it. The other thing is, so you said you had to make a declaration in 75?
No. Well, the declaration, to call it a declaration, came from the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
When we came into under Imam Muhammad, they called it the Shahada. It was the Shahada.
So the second question I was going to ask is, when he came with a transition, did you all know it was a transition coming? Was it like any signs that change was going to come?
Yes, there was plenty of signs. No, it was gradual, but there was a lot of signs, especially in the teachings. You know, Imam Muhammad described our first experience as a resurrection. That was a resurrection from the dead, the mentally dead. We were mentally dead as described, and resurrection from that way of thinking, where a lot of that way of thinking typically came from something that our foreparents had been characterized by. And we just was living it and didn't even know it, you know. So the second resurrection was coming into real Islam. That's when he asked us, okay, we're going to take the chairs out of the masjid, the temple. We're going to start to learn the salat and stop just doing dua.
Also, that's what we were just doing, dua.
The only thing we were doing is, surely I turn myself to thee, O Allah, the Abraham's prayer. Surely I turn myself to thee, O Allah, being upright to you who originated the heavens and the earth, and I'm not an polytheist.
So let me...
That was the main prayer we said.
Did y'all know the Fatiha then?
I don't think so.
The reason I ask is because now you see members of the Nation of Islam. There's a brother that's been here a couple times, and they do salat at the same time and everything that we do now. And I wonder if they realized it was a gradual progression, that you all didn't do salat, that you didn't make the 5 obligatory prayers the way we do now. And what they're, next time I see him, I'll ask him, like, does he know, like, why you do it now?
Is he an older brother?
No, he's a young brother. He's maybe in his early 20s, early 30s or late 20s.
Oh, so he just want to know. He wasn't around at that time. He just want to know.
Well, that's why I want to ask. Does he know?
Oh, okay.
How we know how you all came into it and what was taught initially?
Yeah. It was mostly gradual, and the second resurrection was coming into full Islam, as taught by Imam Muhammad, because nobody else came to our community to teach us. Some of the studies also show that not only did no other Muslim come in our community to teach us, the Muslims throughout the world didn't think about helping us either, because the Ahmadiyya community was here while we were in the Nation of Islam, but they were quiet. They wouldn't say anything, and I don't know what the deal was. I know if you parallel that to the history of Prophet Muhammad, where some of the believers were, at first they were teaching only to themselves in secrecy because of the threats.
Right.
I don't know what the threats were to the Ahmadiyya community at that time and why they didn't teach. So when Imam came and he started teaching, they started coming out a little bit more. And they wanted to try to correct him and make sure that what he's saying was correct. So my question was, okay, y'all say you've been around here all this long and you wouldn't even say anything to us. Now when this brother comes and tries to explain it, and explains it as best as he can, now you want to have some pushback or some objections to what he's doing. But world leaders have recognized what he's doing is good. So we ain't paying much attention to the Ahmadiyya community. Although they do have, they have a Quran by, they follow, I think they follow Maulana Muhammad Ali, his version of the Quran. So that was during the second resurrection when I actually realized a lot of that friction that came about. So when Imam started talking about the second resurrection, the teaching that he came up with was explaining a lot of scriptural knowledge, biblical, and showing what the Quran says about it. I was like still blown away because there's so much of it. I wasn't in the Bible. I mean, my family, my mother and my auntie were Christians. And we only went maybe on holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, because she didn't force us to go.
Right.
And we didn't go when we were in the church.
Do you think that would make it easier for your transition because you weren't strictly in the church? Because I know a lot of times people's family has become a deterrent from them accepting Islam. Because it wasn't something that was obligatory, that you were open to other things, and that your father traveled the world, made it easier for you to accept Islam?
That could have been. That could have been, because some families who are a little bit more stricter on people, they have their position now. Sometimes their position is adamant, and sometimes it's not. But that could have been, because even when we went to church, we wasn't paying attention. As young people, we was maybe looking at the girls and things that children do, young people do. But anyway, when he started showing the explanation of some of